Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. Recently, Justin Trudeau made the statement that he was going to be stepping down after the Liberal leadership race. We have been no huge fans of Justin Trudeau, actually, since before he even got elected. But, a lot of people are excited about this, and there's some excitement about the kind of new guy, Pierre, who may be coming in. So the question in this video we're going to talk about is, A, is now a great time to move to Canada because of that? Is that kind of like things releasing? And by the way, I've seen some polls where a bunch of people are like, hey, they're much less likely to leave Canada now that they know that Trudeau is going to be out. Trudeau has had collapsing popularity. And, is Pierre going to kind of bring this resurgence of Canada? So we're going to talk about that today. Before we do, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the all notification bell. Thank you for being here. Welcome. I am Michael from Offshore Citizen. We are some of the foremost experts in relocation. So helping to, if you want to move to another country and get residence permits there and get set up and do your tax planning and get your banking and all that sort of thing, as well as international corporate structuring, tax planning. So this is basically if you're going to stay in your country or you're moving abroad, you need to set up corporate structures, have offshore companies, and understand how to navigate all the rules. They're fairly complex, so it's not just so simple. I always tell people if it was as easy as setting up a company in BVI and paying no tax, everybody would do it. You can't do that. So legally navigating all those complexities is one of the main things that we help people with. So if either of those things are interesting to you, please reach out to us. You can book a call with me, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's a link in the description below, or you can send a message through offshorecitizen.net. Okay, so first of all, I have been very against Justin Trudeau since before Justin Trudeau was elected. I remember right after he got elected talking to a girl and she was like, oh, Trudeau is so great. And I was like, what are you talking about? Oh yeah, he appointed this diverse cabinet. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how are actual real people's lives actually better? And so, yeah, I was very against Trudeau then. I remain very against Trudeau now. What I find concerning is that Trudeau was popular enough to get elected multiple times and that the Canadian people in their decision-making framework didn't make a good decision about Trudeau. And I see nothing inbuilt that their decision-making process has improved. I think we are just kind of naturally, hey, listen, inflation is high, we're upset, so therefore let's kick out the current guy and whoever the next most popular guy is comes in. And this brings us a little bit to Pierre. So what do I think about Pierre? Pierre is got some witty quips, but I don't see that Pierre knows how to do anything. So Pierre has basically been a career politician. And so I don't expect that he will, save Canada or something like this. I do think there's a decent chance that Canada has somewhat of a rebound around him. Not because he's so great. I don't think he's so great, but I do think that going from terrible to bad is, an improvement. And so you can have some sort of a rebound in the markets. Canada has been considered pretty uninvestable for a lot of international investors for quite a long period of time. And so it wouldn't take that much to turn this. The Canadian dollar has been smashed. So I actually converted a bunch of different funds from US dollars to Canadian dollars fairly recently when the US dollar spiked. Figured there's kind of diversifying that currency exposure. And I suspect that there's some reasonable chance that a person will be able to get that as a little bit of a tailwind on any Canadian dollar denominated assets. So we'll see. Might be wrong on that, but I would rather be a little bit diversified in my currency exposure at this point in time, given the US dollar has been so strong, and I tend to think that the US trade is very overcrowded. So does that mean, it's great to move back to Canada? So first of all, I would say that obviously if you want to move to Canada, I'm from Canada. Canada's got lots of things to appreciate. It has always had lots of things to appreciate. So, not taking away from any of those. And if a person was going to go, they probably were going to go anyway. This being said, is the environment from the perspective of business, tax, freedom, stuff like that likely to improve? Probably it will. Trudeau was pretty hardcore woke, pretty hardcore WEF agenda type guy. And Pierre is simply not, right? Now, of course, Pierre's not been elected yet, so he may not win, but I think it's fairly likely that he does at this point in time. Whether he gets in with a minority or majority is, a little bit of another debate. Seems fairly likely that he will get in. I certainly have no intentions of moving back to Canada now, or actually, to be honest, I never have any intentions of moving back to Canada. I think my conclusion, having lived abroad for quite a few years now, is that everything that I like about Canada, I can find a better version of somewhere else. So I will always go back to visit family and friends, and there's always wonderful things in that regard. But I certainly would not move back on the basis of this. I think things would need to be very terrible elsewhere for me to consider that. Is it a reason that a person should consider not leaving? I would suspect that you will probably not find that it is going to have a super meaningfully improvement from a tax policy standpoint. So probably they will get rid of the carbon tax. That's something that's been deeply unpopular. So I would suspect they would do away with that. There's a decent chance, I think, that you'll see some easing up on corporate tax policies. Conservatives tend to be more in favor of that. I think you can kind of see with the Trump administration, there's just sort of a general move in that direction, which is interesting. So that's probably going to happen. Far from certain, but probably. Will it be like super awesome? No, it probably will not be super awesome. It will probably continue to be pretty high tax. Maybe they will roll back they'd increased the capital gains from 50% to 66% over 250,000. Maybe they will go and they will roll that back. Something, like there's sort of things they can improve at the margins that will make it somewhat more attractive. But on the whole, in terms of being like really friendly for businesses in that regard, I kind of doubt it. I think they will probably push for some sort of kind of ways of attracting investment, and that could be helpful. One of the big complaints has been housing prices have just been outrageous in a lot of Canada, in particular Vancouver and Toronto areas, but a lot of areas in general. There's some very funny TikToks where this guy has real European castles versus Canadian real estate, and he'll show like just some dump in Toronto, and you could buy a castle in Europe for the same price. So I mean, it's kind of laughable how bad that has gotten. That problem, I think, is like a slow, challenging problem to solve. So even if somebody came along who had the wherewithal and all these sorts of things and understand the system, I don't think that they would be in a situation where they would be able to change it very quickly. I think it would take a reasonable amount of time for prices to kind of moderate. And I think probably the strategy would be to kind of prevent prices from going up rather than having prices go down much, largely because sort of captive to a large share of the population who a lot of their wealth is in their home, and those are voters. So, there's sort of this difficult thing. In fact, literally the housing czar in Canada made the comment that we're going to improve housing affordability without lowering house prices. Unbelievable. So yeah, some sort of insanity that exists there. I don't see that Canada has a strong backbench the way the US does. Like if you want to say, okay, hey, let's be bullish on the US, we can say, there's a strong group of business people who understand how to get things done, who are kind of like going to push various different agendas. That's kind of like the optimistic view of the US right now, right? Does Canada have that? I've seen no signs of this. None whatsoever. I think most of the really talented business people leave and go to the US or someplace else. And so, the number of people who are there to go and jump in and kind of push things really well seems fairly small. So from my standpoint, I think optimism on is now the time to move to Canada. Not if you weren't wanting to move there before. If you're wanting to move there before, cool, great. Like I said, there's lots to appreciate about Canada. I'm from Canada, I can't diss it too much. And I do think that on some of these vectors, if these sorts of things are things that bother you, right? Things like carbon taxes and cost of living and wokeism and taxes and stuff, like there will probably be some at the margins improvement across those vectors for you. This being said, is it going to be like, hey, this is like the new paradise of places to live? Seems unlikely to me. I, however, would love to hear what you guys think, so put it in the comments below, and I will kind of do some videos in the future a little bit on some of the tax planning around Canada. I've done some of those previously. You can go and check those videos out. I will see you on the next video.